Mi smo izvan niše, ruralni turizam kao konsolidirani dio turističkog gospodarstva. Klaus Ehrlich, Rural Tour, Europska federacija ruralnog turizma, Belgija.
Hello, good morning, dobar dan. If this is more or less correct, that's my slow Croatian. I will speak in English. First of all, thanks to Diana, to Christina, amazing job you're doing. We will talk tonight about a nice proposal or idea we have in mind, so be prepared. But I will jump into the material directly. We have a nice title. See if this works, because yesterday somebody had a problem. You see the nice title and you see a bit provocative. Okay, we're out of the niche, but now what? So I warn you, I'm not the most political correct speaker, and I'm pretty down to practical words. So sometimes I'm a bit outside of what you hear in these events. First, quickly, because yesterday we had a presentation of our entity, but the room was just with international participants. Who we are what is called in the terminology tourism trade organization, which means a professional Europe-wide organization that does, I use a nice word, advocacy. Now, if you don't know what advocacy means, the clearer word is lobbying. So we are lobbyists. Advocates, sounds nicer, right? So we represent the so-called or rural tourism, which is the topic of this Congress. I will not go into details of the definition. Basically, it's very small tourism enterprises in rural areas, 1, 2, 3, 5, 10 people working in one company, usually that's the size. So this is what is called in EU terminology micro and nano enterprises. Currently we have 27 members from 24 countries, and now I will jump into the topic of this invention. It says we are out of the niche. So why did I use the word out of the niche? Well, a quick history. Rural tourism started as a support to farming activity. This was in the 50s, 60s. It extended as a tool for rural development outside farm tourism, so tourism activity as such. This was 85 forward after one of the event was Cork conference, Salzburg conference. Then internet brought a big push, because now even the smallest one was equally visible to the customer like a big hotel chain, starting year 2001. And the interesting thing is what we find in the last 2 years. During COVID, we were the nice kid in the room, because we were not massified, we were green, we were individual, people were afraid, so we had a huge peak. When you look into statistics in 20 and 21, rural tourism had the best seasons whatsoever, while the coastal or the massive destinations had a problem. So this put us, even if the overall figures now are very similar to what they were 2019-20, the trend is up. We didn't stay that top, but it put us on the map. And that's very important, because if nowadays somebody thinks about making holiday, now they suddenly put rural tourism as one of the options to coastal tourism, to city tourism cruise. This was not the case 3, 4, 5 years ago. So we are, as I call, above the iceberg waterline since COVID 2019. But this means, as I said, long-term trends enhanced. I will not go into details here, because these were already mentioned in different other presentations yesterday. So it's a general trend of the tourism markets, where we have, of course, a very good position, because we respond very well to any of these long-term trends. But what happens now? Suddenly we are fashionable. There was a sentence in the inauguration of this conference on Wednesday evening. And the moderator says, rural tourism is the future tourism concept. Well, I would be very careful with this. Just simply, we cannot put all or even 50% of the current millions of visitors, worldwide travelers, now suddenly in rural areas. This is not realistic, but yes, we are on the map. So we find suddenly after many, many years, like, yeah, all these rural people, okay, yeah, they are there, but not really serious. Now suddenly everybody talks about us. We had the European Commission here, two DGs, employment, growth and agriculture. We are active in the Rural Pact. We have the funding line priorities. Now suddenly everybody gets money for rural and countryside tourism projects. Tried that 5 years ago. People were starving. They didn't reach any European funds. Now suddenly some members told us we can take more. We have more than we can manage. So suddenly everybody jumps on us. We have the UN tourism documentation and the survey that was shown yesterday, and we have, I think, later the best tourism villages example. The Committee of Regions made a specific study. Regional bodies make specific studies. The tourism industry now really talks with us as well. So suddenly you think, what happened here? From being almost invisible to being the nice kid in the room, what happens? And how can we deal with this? So, first thing, and I put this very clear, the danger is we are in the risk of dying of success. Because suddenly we are on the first line, but are we prepared, or are the others prepared for us? And that is a mutual thing which I would like to enter a little bit. First, of course, we are getting mainstream. We are part of the tourism industry. This is something we always must think about. Rural tourism is tourism, and tourism is a business, and it has a tourism industry which has rules and has certain procedures and ways of selling. And if you want to play the game, you need to stick to the rules. We are not different in many aspects. We are small, but we are not completely in a different matrix or universe. So, are we prepared to be really part of the tourism industry system? Are we willing to accept these rules? But also, and that is a very important thing we'll see later on when I go through the 5 core aspects we have to look at, is the system that now suddenly considers us as so beautiful and great, and we are the example, but does this system understand that our rules are not exactly the rules they have, and if they really want to have us, they also have to adapt and change and modify certain things. So it's a mutual thing, and at the moment, my feeling is that we are eaten by the system because the system loves us. Yes, you are now part of the big tourism industry, great, fantastic, we love that. But everybody said, but we keep putting the rules. And as we'll see, as many of you know, these rules that are feasible for big hotels or big tourism chains do simply not work when you have a small enterprise with 2, 3 people working there, sometimes even as an extra income, which is the only financially, economically sustainable way in a rural area. So there is a lot of things where we need to be a bit louder and say. So our problems are, well, we are a small size activity, we cannot work with economy of scale, it's impossible, because we cannot do everything. We have dispersed in territory, it's more difficult to manage, because you have small units across 5, 10 kilometers distance that together create the product, while in a tourism coast center you have everything in 2 square kilometers. And the service structure, therefore, is based on a couple of core infrastructure, sightseeing points, restaurants where people move together, and a lot of small satellites, small services that are grouped in the territory around this. This is completely different to urban tourism, and it is completely different to industrial coast tourism. And it cannot work in the same way they do. So, one-fits-all regulation, as is always loved by governments and is loved by the European Commission, doesn't work. And we have a couple of specific issues there, which I will mention later on, where you really see, okay, they love us, they put us everywhere, but then they say, but the rules we apply on you are the ones we apply for a big hotel chain. Well, guys, this doesn't work. So, the new policy priority, where we are so nice, must come together with the willingness to adapt on both sides. We need to learn, we need to understand we are not just nice people. We are nice people, of course, all of us, but not only. We are also business. But the others have to understand that we are not a diversified structure with 10 departments and 10 specialists in the management, but 2 people doing everything. So, 5 main challenges I would like to comment on. And the first abstract, but really important, not only for us, for the tourism industry in general, is climate change, over-tourism, regulatory framework, skills and competences, destination management. So let's go one by one. Climate change. Well, climate change, we'll find this, and our colleagues from mountainous areas will confirm, they are having an increasing issue with their winter season because they build on snow and skiing, and there is no snow anymore. And it's even sometimes too warm to make artificial snow. So you lose the very base of your economy that sustains your core product is skiing, but there is no skiing. The same situation we have in the coastal Mediterranean areas. I just come from an event I will show in the next slide. This Tuesday, the European tourism industry made a joint statement on addressing climate change in roads. There's a roads declaration. And we had a diagram there, which is not official, but there are studies or prevision studies with a nice diagram about how the peak season will evolve in the Mediterranean countries. And at the moment, as you know, you have the low season, you have June, July, August, September, October. The peak season, when everybody goes on holiday, it's full, and the rest of the year, fine. Now, it is getting too hot. I give you an example. I was at a fair in Italy in February, and it was amazing the number of Italian tourists asking for their summer holiday for the Nordic countries. And I asked them why. Well, it's too hot. We don't want to stay in the south anymore. What is the prediction for the future? July, August are too hot, so we will have, if we have visitors, which depends on school holidays, that's another thing, but we'll have a peak in May, June, we will go down July, August, we'll go up again September, October, November, and then we have the peak. But in the middle, we'll have a problem in the Mediterranean countries. So climate change, that definitely is a thing where we all need to work together. Nature, which is what we sell, biodiversity is changing, wildfires, lack of water, which is critical in small rural communities which have just enough water, because if you now have double population through tourism in high season, where's the water coming from? So it's not so easy. And the next one, of course, regarding climate change is CO2 neutrality. To be very polite on this one, we are not the best in this, because we have a problem. We have a lot of small unities which are a lot more difficult to be kept climate neutral or energy saving than one big complex where you have one big investment, you insulate, and it's done. So on this one, we need to do a lot, and we need to work a lot to comply. Hans yesterday said already the example, their farmers in Austria, they are sustainable. Yes, they are convinced, but don't try to ask them to provide data for that, because then they say, no, it's too complicated for me. Well, this is part where we need to learn and to adapt and to provide and put some more effort, because we are not, just because we are small, we are not sustainable. That's not true. So we need to care about, well, a couple of things, a couple of proposals. We should set up our own roadmap to tackle climate change. Other sectors, hotels, transport has this already. There's this roads declaration, which I will show in a moment. There is a concept called product environment footprint. Of course, make it easy, but make our providers aware and our services aware of this. And of course, when we talk about transport, you see in the diagram is about 50% of all CO2 emissions. All carbon footprint in tourism is on transport. And on transport, in our case, means frequently individual car, driving around everywhere by car. So if we can do a lot there on the ground with multimodal transport in the destination, Zermatt in Switzerland, I did this 50 years ago, no cars allowed. You have to drive up, and then you have small carts in the village, but there's no individual driving. This kind of thing we will increasingly have to think about. How can we move our visitors in the territory? Because we are not concentrated, how can we move them in a sustainable way? So, quickly to this roads declaration. It's too small to read, but I just wanted to show. As I said, we are nicely part of the big tourism players in Europe. You see our beautiful logo there. together with Hotrec and with tour operators and with airlines and with cruise lines. So it's an ambitious declaration. It's a bit nice wording, but I invite you to have a look. Look it up on the internet, joint declaration, roads declaration. It should be everywhere now, published, and have a look at it. So, next point, over-tourism. We thought this was only a matter of Venice, Barcelona, and some other overcrowded places in football events or concerts. Well, we had first cases of over-tourism problems, even accidents, bus crossing on a small mountain road and one rolling down the road, killing 15 people in Spain. Things happened in 23, and I bet for you, it's a sad bet, but I bet for you we'll have more over-tourism phenomena in rural areas this year, 2024. Our problem, we don't have real data available because we're not, our territories never thought about that. Venice at least can count visitors, how many come in. We can't count, we are just, it suddenly happens. So we need to work on this. We need to see this at destination level. We need a better management and organization to have data, to know tourism flows, to manage tourism flows, because if it's too much, it has strong impact on communities. One thing already happening, even in rural areas, hotels, restaurants don't find staff because staff doesn't find places to stay after work, because all places are rented out to visitors. So you kill yourself with your success, because you have so many people visiting that you can't lodge your people that have to attend these visitors. The capacity of infrastructure in a village is meant for maybe the population plus two, by two, but not multiplied by 20, 30, 40. So water supply, waste disposal are problems. And of course, in a village, especially in a smaller one with its tradition, where you have 50 people living and 2 busloads of foreign visitors come in with 100, they feel like in the zoo. And they are not happy because these visitors are disturbing their way of life, and they don't get much out of it except of being looked and photographed. So that are social and cultural impacts, and you see this picture I just found on the internet. Tourists go home, refugees welcome. At least if you come, we would like to have those that really need it and not those that take us as a show, as a zoo. What we need to care about, well, first we need to understand that this is something that also affects rural areas, because this is something so far we're not aware. We think, that's a problem of Venice, that's not ours. Well, it will come. So awareness, we need for our territories a capacity analysis, what can we manage? Maybe a contingency plan, what do we do if for some peak reason we have more than we can manage, and to do this at destination level. Now, this is the beloved topic in all conferences, regulations. It's not only rural tourism, it's everybody. Just a question in the room. How many of you are rural tourism service providers? Please raise your hand. Okay, I look against the light. I don't see many hands up, but anyway, some of you are there. Well, and those that work at local administration, they will know this as well. Basically, there is a tendency, which is logical by law. Law needs to be equal for everybody, so you need one law for everybody. That makes sense. But this means that if you same legislation applies for a hotel and sanitary, etc. aspects as for a small guest house, it is not proportional what is required for one compared with the other, because the risk you have to regulate is smaller in an apartment that you rent that's a normal house than with a hotel where you have 200 people in case of fire, for example. So this one fits all, I commented already, is still applied, and governments tend to love that because for them it's easier, but it doesn't work. And it doesn't work, I repeat, it does not work if they want our model of small size, personalized, non-massified, non-big installation tourism. If policy makers want this, they have to understand this. It does not work. And there is, of course, a resistance to adapt these rules, especially from, well, human resistance to change, because, well, it works like this, why should we bother? But also a resistance of the traditional tourism structures, which see that suddenly their monopoly is not so strong anymore. And we have this discussion going on for years. Something, and I know this is a hot potato I'm touching now, but basically our concept of servicing and of size is what Airbnb is representing and putting on the market. We may like Airbnb or not, but the idea behind is the same. And as we know, Airbnb is hugely successful, mostly in urban areas, but also in rural areas. And they create a problem in urban areas, which affects us because it's with this one-fits-all, now regulators at national level say, okay, fine, these small things, they are all unfair competition, or they don't pay taxes. We'll see that in a moment. That's not true. But anyway, so we need to regulate them. And then it comes down to us that we are already struggling to survive, and we have to just comply another rule additionally, just because others cause problems in another place. So this is something where we just need to make a voice. This is what we are doing at European level, just to explain why we are existing in some point, but we really need a strong voice of the sector. And some of the activities are really, some of the ongoing things are really unfair, but they are disguised as fair. There's this, you see this lobbying influence, political, the L is missing, bias, DSR. I do not want to explain what this is, but I would really love to, if the organizers can organize me a meeting with the providers in the room, in some separate room, with the interpreter, with the translator, because this is a really critical thing that is very hot at the moment, and we need to do something on this. So we need to care about regulation. Well, if you, the address system, really think that we are the future, you need to change. We need stronger own structures that can defend our interests. And we need to exchange best practice cases, because each government does a different thing from their own thinking, and it's very helpful to tell them, look, why don't you do it like they do it in Austria and Germany, in France and Spain, or, depending on the case. So otherwise, we are asphyxiated by regulations, which I heard already in some conversations is a case already that people are fed up. They just say, no, okay, I just drop out. Pre-last, skills and competences, that's pretty easy. The tourism industry has its rules, so we must know them if we want to play the game. Again, there's a lack of awareness. Small providers think they know everything. They do their business, they have customers, so why should they train in anything? But there's a lot of new upcoming things. We heard the digital. If you are not getting online, you're simply not on the market, especially on the international market, which is the more interesting one. So there's a lot of upcoming profiles and skills, and we need to work on the education system. We need to provide training facilities, options that are feasible for people that work at the same time. This often does not exist at the moment. You either do a 100-hour course, which you can't do because you have to work, or you don't get the qualification. We need to work on that. So on new training systems, initial training, vocational education, reskilling, upskilling, all these things. There's an instrument there at European level, the Pact for Skills. I put the logo down there. So now you had before the phrase, if they think we are the future, they need to change. Now, of course, also if we think that we are the future, we need to change. So as I said, it's a mutual thing, what we need to think about. Again, we need the advocacy on this to make the systems, and again, the best practice cases. So there is plenty of them in training, but we don't really know them. And the last one, and that's the last slide as well, this is the thing that brings it all together. I commented before explaining our model, it's core services that serve a wider territory, and then it's a lot of small individual services that satellite and feed into this and connect amongst each other. This requires coordination and management, and it cannot be done by the own small providers because they don't have the capacity They have their core business and they can't do more because there's 2 or 3 people in the company, or 4 or 5, and that's it. So you need to work together, you need an efficient destination management system. Now, DMO, years ago, it was destination marketing that was only selling, so you had all the tourist offices everywhere. Then came internet, they all closed down. You still have them somewhere, but they still do only marketing, and they need to transform into management. Really, to do things on the territory, I always have from what I know in Europe, still the star example is how the Austrians do it. This is definitely a success factor also for Austrian tourism, that they are able to organize on the ground, to finance this on the ground, and to control it with organizations that work on the ground in the interest of the entrepreneurs and of the community on the ground. If we could have this in more countries, this would be very helpful. At least it's one of the models. In France, it's voluntary, the Centre initiative touristique, but it's voluntary, so it happens or it doesn't happen. So we need to care about best practice here, really think about, again, give more importance to the destination management, make this controlled by the stakeholders involved, and of course have a legal framework. In some countries, it's not possible to structure this in a way that it's private run or it's run by stakeholders. So there's a lot of work to do, and that was my contribution. Thank you for the attention. And if you have any questions, we can meet in the coffee breaks or whatsoever. And again, I would like, if possible, organizers could have a look into this, meet up, have a short meeting with the entrepreneurs that are in the room right now at some moment during the day. Thank you.